Thanks for clicking on to the Friday, the 28th of February edition of Logan's European Outlook. If you're enjoying the content here on the channel, you know the drill. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. Well, it is the final day of February and the final day of meteorological winter, and we are about to step into a new season. It is hard to believe that we've ended winter already. It just seems like several weeks ago that we began the season. But it looks as if this month really did. This month, not so much, but perhaps the winter overall played out as expected. It looks as if it's going to be a milder than average winter overall. And February is turning out to be a slightly warmer than average month, I think. Still await the final data from the Met Office, but generally speaking, it looks as if it's going to turn out to be a mild February compared to average, but also a milder winter. So the month of February, in terms of the outlook, has turned out to be slightly milder than anticipated. It also has turned out to be a slightly milder month than what was expected in the winter forecast overall. So obviously that chips slightly away at the scoring of the winter forecast, but I still think that a 7.5 out of 10 is a reasonable score for the overall winter season. I think it has been a mix of mild and cold. We've had a couple of named storms, one very noteworthy storm, obviously, in Storm Aylwin. And overall, I think it's played out pretty well, as already said. But we'll look in today's video at the March outlook, and let's get right into it then. In terms of February and meteorological winter, it's drawn to an end today. The month and the season will wind up slightly milder and drier than average for the UK and Ireland. Another very mild month and winter season overall for the continent. But we also had the coldest of the entire winter for central and southeastern areas over the last couple of weeks. So this is the month to date through Wednesday, the 26th of February. And you can see here that it looks as if it's slightly warmer than average across the majority of the UK, as well as Ireland. Central and southeastern areas colder than average, as can be seen here. Looks like January and February combined was around about average in terms of the temperature anomalies, with the CDAS data even showing some slight anomalous cold across parts of the South Midlands up towards the Humber Estuary, for example. But generally speaking, it was around about average when you combine both January and February. It's really the month of December that has tipped the balance in terms of the overall 90-day period being warmer than average, as can be seen here in the CDAS data. So like January, not so much December. We observed swings of mild and cold during February, with the rotation from mild to cold back to mild phases of the Mann-Julian oscillation, which drove the appropriate positive and negative Arctic oscillation response. So you can look at this article, freely available in markloganweather.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. The Arctic oscillation you can see here responding very nicely throughout the course of the winter season. We had bigger swings between mild and cold, and also the positive versus the negative Arctic oscillation once we surpassed the Christmas New Year period. You can see this big dip here, constituted in a notable cold first half to January. Then we've seen a recovery, more of a positive Arctic oscillation during the second half of the month. Then we've seen this big drop off in the negative towards the middle portions of February, constituting in the coolest of the entire winter for Central and Eastern Europe, it has to be said. But we didn't see quite the notable cold across the UK and Ireland as was expected. And the reasons why is the source region, Western Russia, Central Europe. Easterly flow, we had a very good synoptic pattern overall, with a 1050 millibar high across Northern Europe. We had easterly winds underneath, but we had a lack of cold air over Central Europe to tap into. We still were below average, and we still had a reasonably cold middle portion of the month, but we've had a very mild end to the month. We had a cold middle, but we also had a mild beginning of February, and therefore the overall 28-day period is turning out to be slightly warmer than average. So less of a negative Arctic North Atlantic oscillation, due to the more, and I believe the ocean atmosphere coupling within the central Pacific of the equatorial region constituted a more La Nina-esque atmosphere during the middle and second half of the winter season. So once the ocean and the atmosphere coupled, we did see the response within the hemispheric pattern, but we did also have a favourable Scandinavian high setup, especially mid-February, but with the easterly flow occurred without the presence of real cold over the central continent. We did not have the cold that I first expected. North Atlantic Oscillation, you can see here, it was more positive as opposed to negative compared to the Arctic Oscillation. You can see here the bigger swings back and forth. So there was quite often the case, you see, when you've got a negative Arctic Oscillation, you've got a negative North Atlantic Oscillation, and when you've got a positive, you tend to have a more positive Arctic Oscillation. That tended to be a little bit skewed. We didn't have quite the same matchup as can be the case. So generally speaking, we've seen some flexing back and forth and a little bit of a fight between the various global drivers. So the middle and late February cold spell was Europe's coldest of the entire winter. We did see some notable cold spells and temperatures as a consequence over central areas of the continent. You can see here the middle portions of the month. This is a 7-day increment showing a notably cold anomaly here across many areas of Central Europe, including the UK, not so much Ireland, as can be seen here. And then it was a very, very mild west of the continent, Northern Europe as well, cold across the southeast during the final 7 days of the month. So throughout the winter, La Nina became more established within the central equatorial Pacific, and in combination with the solar maximum and the west QBO, these drivers likely helped reinforce a strong polar vortex within the stratosphere and the hemispheric pattern favourable more for North America as opposed to European cold. The winter forecast call for above average, and while the timing of the mild and cool spells may have been off, the overall idea I think was good. Check out the winter forecast to look back on what was said. There is a link in the description there as well. So meteorological winter ends and spring begins milder than average as per the latest GFS. This is the upcoming 5-day period. So this video has been recorded on Thursday, and this is the period between the 26th through the 3rd of March here, and we're talking generally warmer than average to the north of the Birmingham area, slightly below average across the southwest of the UK, Southern Ireland also. So we end the season on a mild note. We begin a new season on a mild note as well. So the medium to longer range models support Atlantic dominance through at least the middle portions of March, with perhaps some minor fluctuation between milder versus colder than average. There's a degree of uncertainty beyond mid-March, with another burst of warming within the stratosphere, which could attempt to build pressure back over the higher latitudes beyond the 20th of March. You can see here off the 10 millibar anomaly for temperature off the GFS. You can see this next burst of warming taking place within the stratosphere itself. So this could bring a chillier end of the month of March if, 1, it occurs, and 2, the ridge trough setup is in the right place. Obviously, by the time we reach the latter half of March, days are considerably longer, the sun's stronger, so any cold spell would be far less than several weeks back. Therefore, an overall milder than average March, with potential wet and windy spells, especially if the MJO manages to find itself back in the phases 2 and 3. Below is the CFSV2 and the ECMWF seasonal for the month of March, and it's mild and wet overall in both these models. I tend to agree with them based on various signals that I'm seeing at the moment here, but I tend to agree with these largely with cross-model agreement on a mainly positive Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation through the upcoming month. So this is the 500 millibars for the month of March off the CFSV2, low heights up in the Greenland and the Arctic over northern portions of North America tend to have a stronger ridge within the subtropics, lifting a little bit further north as well when you've got lower heights over the top. That is a textbook positive AO/NAO signal, as can be seen here. Looking at the European view for the month of March, then off the CFSV2, strong positive over northeastern Europe, negative up towards Greenland and Iceland. That is largely a west to southwesterly flow within the means, and as a consequence, warmer than average. Also wet than average, west facing areas of the UK, most of Ireland, wetter than average, and then up into Scandinavia as well. Central areas of Europe is drier than average, slightly wetter across the western Mediterranean, and we may see some spin-ups late with that as well. This is the ECM seasonal here then. This is a period for the month of March. Very, very similar look, if you notice here, to the CFSV2. So this is the CFSV2, this is the ECMWF, and we've got generally the low heights up into the Arctic region with positive heights over both the mid-latitude North America as well as Europe here. So generally speaking, it looks as if it's going to be a milder, wetter than average month for the UK, Ireland, wettest north and west of Europe. And yeah, that is the overall thinking with regards to the month of March. Warmer and wetter than average looks likely. We could see something towards the latter half of the month in terms of more high latitude block. And by the way, thrown in for good measure, this is the GFS extended for the upcoming 31-day period. This is February 27th through the 29th of March. Very, very similar. It's pretty uncanny actually. The CFSV2, ECMWF, and the GFS extended all show a very similar upper level setup across the Northern Hemisphere, and that screams out milder than average with all three models. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Back again with a short video tomorrow, and then there will be a live stream 4 p.m. as usual this upcoming Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye for now.